My partner treats me like alcohol is more important than I am. My partner, who I'll call Sam, is a person I've shared many dreams and moments with. We've built a life together, one filled with little rituals and routines that once felt comforting. But lately, it feels like I'm drifting in a vast, cold ocean, watching our connection slip further from reach, unable to grasp it no matter how hard I try. Every evening, Sam has what she refers to as her decompression time. I've learned that this time is non-negotiable for her, something she clings to like an anchor, her way of shedding the stresses of the day. For most people, decompressing might mean a warm bath, a walk around the block, or curling up with a book. For Sam, however, it means drink after drink, her ritual progressively slipping into something darker. It starts innocently enough, a run and coke, then another, maybe one more. But several drinks can quickly escalate. Several means a minimum of 8 run and cokes, and sometimes it goes further, with a bottle of whiskey or half a bottle of vodka entering the picture. It's an all too familiar scene, her hunched over a glass, eyes dulling, movements slowing. I watch from afar as she settles into this nightly routine, like a stranger observing a life she is disconnected from. When Sam retreats to her office, she creates a fortress out of solitude and inebriation. She shuts the door, and I can almost feel the walls closing in. This space, once filled with shared laughter, has become a ghost town, populated only by her empty glasses, her computer, and the sound of gaming consoles humming in the background. There's a barrier now, one that's both tangible and emotional. The door might as well be locked. Each night, I wait. I wait in the kitchen, preparing meals she won't eat with me. I wait at the table, utensils laid out, hoping that tonight might be different. But the hours slip by, and my hope fades as I hear her laughing, not with me but at whatever game or video she's watching. The laughter once shared between us has been replaced by one-sided exchanges with the digital world. I find myself resenting the empty chair across from me, the silence that fills our home as if it were a third person in our relationship, a constant reminder of the growing chasm between us. I work from home, which used to feel like a blessing. But now it's a curse. The home that should offer comfort and security instead amplifies my loneliness. Our home office, where we once spent productive hours side by side, has become her drinking den. I can't be there when she's in this state, so I retreat to the lounge, hoping that a change in scenery might allow me to focus on my own tasks. But even there, peace is fleeting. Sam's need to escape is more powerful than her need to connect with me. She stumbles out of her office, a drink in hand, her smile lopsided, her eyes glazed over. She looks at me with a kind of distant affection that feels hollow, and she interrupts my work with random musings or nonsensical questions. Sometimes she's lighthearted, playful even, unaware of the damage her actions are doing. Other times, she's morose, drifting into monologues about her dissatisfaction with life, her discontent with work, her frustration at the world. It's as if I am merely an audience member, a passive recipient of her drunken musings. She doesn't notice that I'm struggling too, that her presence in this state disrupts not only my work but my sense of stability and peace. It's the little things that add up, the subtle erosion of comfort and love. The mess she leaves behind, empty bottles, discarded wrappers, and glasses sticky with the remnants of her drinks, become tiny monuments to our unraveling. And when I try to address it, when I muster up the courage to voice my feelings, it feels as though my words are swallowed up by the very walls of our home, fading into the same silence that now permeates our relationship. Sam has always been a hard worker, but her job now only requires her presence 3 days a week. Thursday and Friday, which should feel like weekends for us, have become extensions of her escape. Instead of planning outings or making breakfast together, she chooses to start her day with a drink, just as she ends it. By midday, she's in her office, the door closed, the sounds of gaming filling the air, her laughter muffled and hollow. It's a surreal existence. I watch her indulge in this cycle, day after day, and with each drink, it feels like she's slipping further away, lost to some inner turmoil that I can't reach, no matter how hard I try. I've tried to ignore it, to brush off the impact it has on me, but the weight of it all grows heavier each day. The emotional toll of living with someone who chooses escapism over intimacy, avoidance over accountability, is a burden that I am left to bear alone. The loneliness is all-encompassing, wrapping around me like a thick fog. Our home, once a sanctuary, has become a prison. I feel like a stranger in my own life, a spectator to my own relationship, helpless as I watch the person I love drift further into a world where I can't follow. In the hours between his drinking and his sleep, the impact of his habits settles over me like a heavy blanket. The nights bring yet another burden, the relentless noise of his snoring, echoing down the hall and seeping through our bedroom walls. Each rumbling breath feels like a harsh reminder of everything that has spiraled out of control between us. The snoring is no small inconvenience, it's all-consuming, filling the quiet space of the night and making rest impossible. I find myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, the dim glow of the moon casting shadows on the walls. I turn on my side, press the pillow over my ears, but it's no use. The low, guttural noise persists, a physical embodiment of the barriers that have sprung up between us. The lack of sleep leaves me feeling drained, both physically and emotionally. The bags under my eyes deepen, my patience wanes, and with each restless night, I feel myself unraveling a little more. It was early August when I finally gathered the courage to address this spiral head-on. I approached him carefully, choosing a calm evening when he seemed relaxed and open, hoping that he might actually hear me this time. I asked if he could limit his drinking to the weekends, Friday and Saturday only. I chose my words carefully, voicing my concerns without accusation, laying everything out as honestly and as gently as I could. I told him how I felt when he retreated into the bottle every evening, how his habits were chipping away at the foundation of our relationship, how the snoring was affecting my sleep, my work, and my well-being. It was a plea, really, a request for him to meet me halfway, to show that he cared enough to make this small change for the sake of us. He looked at me, eyes hazy yet attentive, and said he understood. He even seemed remorseful, nodded, and said he would try. He agreed, though a hint of defensiveness lingered in his expression, a subtle resistance I couldn't quite place. But I clung to his words, grateful for any semblance of hope that maybe, just maybe, things might change. 6 weeks later, nothing had changed. The bottles still piled up, the snoring still persisted. Each week brought with it the same hollow promises, the same lack of follow-through. I remember one night, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, waiting for him to stumble out of his office, hoping we'd have one of those honest, late-night talks. When he finally came out, I asked him gently, trying not to sound accusatory, what happened to keeping it to the weekends? My voice was soft, more hurt than angry. He hesitated, a flicker of something defensive in his eyes. I don't know. I felt pressured into it, he said, his voice tinged with frustration. Like I didn't really have a choice. The words stung. Pressured? Didn't have a choice. I struggled to understand how a simple compromise, a small ask for the sake of our relationship, could be interpreted as pressure. I reminded him, gently, that this was something he had agreed to. I wasn't forcing him, I was asking for respect, for a chance to rebuild our connection. But his response cut deep, leaving a wound that would ache long after our conversation ended. I felt like I was speaking to a stranger, someone who was too far gone to see the pain his choices were causing. I told him, as clearly as I could, that his refusal to compromise sent a clear message. His desire to drink was more important than my well-being, more important than our relationship. There it was, laid bare, the unspoken truth that had gnawed at my heart for so long. He said he'd try again, his voice tinged with guilt, but I could feel the emptiness in his words, the lack of real commitment behind them. And then, it became a game. He'd start to guilt me into letting him drink, manipulating conversations to paint himself as the victim, the one who was forced to give up his only escape. His tone would shift, softening as he'd say, "Can't I just have a few drinks tonight? It's been a rough day." He'd look at me with pleading eyes, his expression desperate, almost childlike, making me feel like the bad guy, the one keeping him from some simple pleasure. The guilt weighed on me, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. How did I become the villain in this narrative? How did my request for respect and connection turn into a demand he felt trapped by? The worst part was that I began to question myself. I'd think, maybe I am being unreasonable. Maybe he does need this to unwind. Who am I to deny him that? But deep down, I knew that this wasn't about a simple drink. It was about the distance he had created between us, the void that grew with every sip he took. I was watching him slip further away, and no amount of reasoning or compromise seemed to matter. I was left to sit with the hollow echo of his promises, each one more meaningless than the last. 3 weeks ago, I thought that maybe I was asking for too much. I had exhausted all my pleas, tried every way I knew to communicate, and still felt unheard. I wondered if, perhaps, my request for him to stop drinking entirely during the week was unrealistic. After all, he'd made it clear that this was something he relied on. I wanted to believe that maybe a compromise, something smaller, more manageable, would work. So, with a mix of resignation and hope, I sat down with him one evening and approached it gently. "Maybe I was wrong to ask you to stop drinking entirely during the week," I said, choosing my words carefully, each one carrying the weight of countless past conversations. "But what if, instead of stopping altogether, you cut back a little? Just 1 or 2 drinks a night, instead of everything you've been having. Do you think that could work?" He looked at me, surprised, maybe even a little relieved. "Yeah," he nodded, with that same look of feigned determination I'd seen before. "I can do that." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that this time would be different. It was just 1 or 2 drinks, after all. Surely, this was achievable. And for a fleeting moment, I thought that maybe this compromise would bring us closer, give us a chance to reclaim some of the normalcy we'd lost. But somewhere deep down, there was a part of me that knew. I had seen this play out too many times to let myself fully buy into his words, but I clung to a shred of hope all the same. But then, last night, everything fell apart again. I walked into his office, planning to remind him that dinner was ready, hoping he'd come and sit with me at the table, maybe have a real conversation. But instead, I found him there, half slouched in his chair, a nearly empty 1.5-liter bottle of some random liquor beside him. The sight of it knocked the air out of me, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring, feeling the familiar pang of disappointment settle in my chest. He noticed me standing there, but he didn't flinch. In his slightly glazed-over eyes, there was no hint of guilt or shame, just a distant look that barely registered my presence. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. After all, we'd talked about this. He'd promised. And here we were again, in the same place, with the same broken promises. So, not doing the 1 to 2 drinks thing this week, "Hi," I muttered, my voice hollow, trying to keep the edge of hurt from slipping in. He shrugged, an indifference in his posture that cut deeper than anything he could have said. I nodded, the numbness taking over. There was nothing more to say, nothing that hadn't already been said. My words, my requests, my emotions, they all felt useless, like shouting into a void where nothing ever echoed back. Without another word, I walked out of his office, closing the door softly behind me. I went to the kitchen, mechanically preparing dinner for one. The silence around me felt heavy, but at the same time, there was an odd kind of peace in it. I was alone, truly alone, in the home we shared, but at least I didn't have to sit across from him and pretend everything was fine. I ate my meal on the couch, each bite tasting bland, devoid of any joy or comfort. The house was eerily quiet, The only sounds the occasional clink of my fork against the plate and the low hum of his games from the other room. There was a time when the thought of eating separately would have felt absurd. We used to laugh over dinner, talk about our days, share little details about our lives. Now, all that remained were silent meals and endless nights spent in different rooms. After dinner, I lay on the couch, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at the ceiling. I tried to lose myself in a book, then in a show, but nothing could drown out the ache inside me. The loneliness was consuming, suffocating, and I felt trapped in a situation I couldn't escape. This was supposed to be my sanctuary, my safe place, but it had become a prison, each corner haunted by the ghosts of who we used to be. Sometime during the night, he staggered out of the office, not even glancing in my direction as he stumbled toward the couch. He collapsed there, his body sinking into the cushions, his breathing already deep and uneven. I watched him for a moment, a strange mix of anger and sadness welling up inside me. This was the man I loved, the man I had chosen, and yet, here he was, unreachable, lost in a haze of his own making. As he lay there, snoring softly, oblivious to the pain he'd caused, I felt the last bits of hope within me start to slip away. I didn't want this life, this hollow, fractured existence where I was nothing more than a spectator to my own relationship. And as I lay there, listening to his snoring and feeling the ache in my chest grow, I knew that something had to change. But I was too tired to figure out what, too exhausted to keep trying to fix something that felt irrevocably broken. I'm at the edge. A place where all the words I could say feel worn out, like echoes from conversations we've already had too many times. I've tried everything I know to make him understand, to show him the pain I'm feeling, the slow erosion of our connection under the weight of his drinking. It's exhausting, this cycle of hope and disappointment, and I'm realizing that I can't keep asking, can't keep trying to pull him out of the darkness he chooses every night. Living together, sharing the same walls, the same rooms, only amplifies the emptiness. I love him, I truly do, but love has turned into something bittersweet, a reminder of the life we could have, of the laughter and shared moments that used to fill this house. Now, each night is a quiet reminder of how far we've drifted, how little we actually share anymore. The loneliness is deeper than anything I've felt before, worse than any breakup, because it's happening right here, with him sitting in the next room. Recently, after finally completing a major project I'd been pouring my energy into, I took a step back to reevaluate things, to see if maybe with my schedule a bit lighter, we could find time to reconnect. I reached out to him, one more time, choosing my words carefully, hoping he might listen. Now that my big project is done, do you think we could spend more time together? In the evenings, maybe we could sit in the living room, have dinner together, just be with each other. I waited, watching his expression, hoping to see a flicker of something, some acknowledgement that he missed me too. He nodded, said yes, but there was a hesitation in his voice, something that told me he wasn't fully present. It's like he was agreeing just to placate me, to put off the inevitable discussion a little longer. And then last night happened. Another evening, another silent meal on the couch, another night where he chose to stay in the office, the door closed, the sound of video games and drinking echoing down the hall. I felt my heart sink, the realization hitting me harder than it ever had before. When I finally asked him why he hadn't joined me, his response was blunt, almost dismissive. Well, there's no negativity in here. You're too negative. His words hit like a slap, stripping away the last bits of hope I had clung to. I was too negative because I wanted him present, because I was tired of being alone in the relationship we were supposed to be building together. He could only see my frustration, my hurt, as an inconvenience, something to be avoided. The irony was painful. He saw me as the negative presence when, all this time, I'd only been trying to find some light in the darkness his drinking brought into our lives. It's strange to feel so alone with someone you love, to share a home yet feel like you are living parallel lives. I don't want more nights like this. I don't want to feel like I'm waiting around for someone who may never choose me over the bottle. over the escape he finds behind that closed office door. So here I am, at a crossroads, uncertain of where to go from here. I've thought about boundaries, about creating lines he can't cross, about giving him ultimatums. But a part of me wonders if any boundary would be enough to change things. I can't force him to want this relationship, to value it the way I do. And yet, the thought of leaving feels just as painful as the thought of staying. I'm not ready to give up on him, on us, but I also can't keep losing pieces of myself in the process. I've come here for advice, for suggestions, for anything that might help me find a way forward. Maybe someone else has faced this struggle, knows how to set boundaries with someone who doesn't see the harm they're causing. I need a way to protect my own heart, to hold on to whatever is left of my own happiness. Because if I keep going like this, I'm afraid I'll lose myself entirely. And as much as I love him, I can't keep sacrificing my own peace just to maintain a relationship that feels more fragile with each passing day.